On July 11, 2004, the sun set over Brick Township, New Jersey, casting long shadows over a community that would soon be plunged into darkness. 16-year-old Brittney Gregory, a bright and promising high school sophomore, vanished without a trace. Her disappearance sent ripples of fear and confusion through the town, as neighbors and friends grappled with the unsettling reality that one of their own was gone. Brittney had been staying with her father and his girlfriend, Lori Peterson, that evening. Around 8:30 p.m., she called her mother, Deborah Gregory, from her father's home. She mentioned wanting a ride to her boyfriend's house. Deborah assured her that her sister would be there soon to pick her up. However, when they called back 45 minutes later, there was no answer. Lori returned home later that night to find Brittney gone. The following days were filled with frantic searching and mounting anxiety. Local authorities, volunteers, and family members scoured the area, hoping for any sign of Brittney. Despite their efforts, there was no trace of her. The community rallied together, organizing search parties and spreading the word through media outlets, but Brittney remained missing. As the days turned into weeks, the hope of finding Brittney alive began to fade. Then, on July 28, 2004, a breakthrough came. A woman led police to a shallow grave in Lakewood, New Jersey, less than 2 miles from the home of the man who would later be identified as her killer. There, they discovered Brittney's lifeless body, hastily buried in the sand. The discovery brought a sense of grim closure to the search, but it also opened the door to a new chapter of horror and disbelief. The man arrested in connection with Brittney's death was 40-year-old Jack Fuller, a Howell resident with a criminal history. Fuller had been acquainted with Brittney's father, but the details of their relationship remained unclear. What was known was that Fuller had a history of drug abuse, including crack cocaine, which would later play a significant role in the tragic events that unfolded. According to reports, Fuller admitted to picking up Brittney and offering her a ride. During the drive, he began smoking crack cocaine, which upset Brittney. When she asked him not to smoke in front of her, Fuller became enraged. He punched her multiple times in the head, causing her to lose consciousness. In a panic, he buried her body in the shallow grave. The revelation of these details shocked the community and left many grappling with the senselessness of the crime. Brittney had been a straight-A student, a talented artist, and a beloved daughter and friend. Her life had been cut short by a man who had no regard for her humanity. In the aftermath of Brittney's death, her family and the community were left to pick up the pieces. The pain of her loss was palpable, and the questions surrounding her murder lingered in the minds of those who knew her. How could someone so close to her family commit such an atrocity? What had driven Jack Fuller to take the life of an innocent teenager? As the investigation continued, the answers to these questions began to emerge, revealing a complex web of relationships, addiction, and violence. The case would unfold in unexpected ways, challenging perceptions and uncovering uncomfortable truths about the people involved. If you're following along, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The twists are far from over, and you won't believe what happens next. According to reports, Fuller admitted to picking up Brittney and offering her a ride. During the drive, he began smoking crack cocaine, which upset Brittney. When she asked him not to smoke in front of her, Fuller became enraged. He punched her multiple times in the head, causing her to lose consciousness. In a panic, he buried her body in a shallow grave in Lakewood, New Jersey, less than 2 miles from his home. The details of the crime were chilling. Fuller had been a family friend, someone who had been trusted by Brittney's father. The fact that he could commit such a heinous act left many grappling with feelings of betrayal and disbelief. The community, which had once seen Fuller as a familiar face, now viewed him as a monster. In the aftermath of the murder, Brittney's family was left to pick up the pieces. Her mother, Deborah Gregory, was devastated by the loss of her daughter. She had been the one to receive Brittney's final phone call, the one who had promised to pick her up. The guilt and sorrow she felt were overwhelming. Her sister, Bobby Joe, was equally heartbroken, struggling to understand how someone they knew could cause such harm. The pain extended beyond the immediate family. Brittney's friends were also deeply affected. Her best friend, who had been one of the last people to see her alive, was left with unanswered questions and a profound sense of loss. The entire community mourned the loss of a young life taken too soon. As the trial approached, the community held its breath, waiting for justice to be served. In January 2006, Jack Fuller pleaded guilty to the murder of Brittney Gregory. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. While the sentence provided some measure of justice, it did little to ease the pain of those who loved Brittney. Her life had been cut short, and no amount of time behind bars could bring her back. The case of Brittney Gregory serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind familiar faces. It underscores the importance of trust and the devastating consequences when that trust is betrayed. The community of Brick Township, though forever changed by the tragedy, continues to honor Brittney's memory, ensuring that her story is not forgotten. What are your thoughts on this case? Share them in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. The discovery of Brittney Gregory's body and the subsequent arrest of Jack Fuller left a community in mourning, but it also raised a much darker question: how well can we ever really know the people in our lives? The reality of a trusted family friend, someone who had been welcomed into their home, turning into a violent murderer shattered the illusion of safety and familiarity that so many had once relied on. In the weeks following Fuller's arrest, Brittney's family, friends, and the entire Brick Township community struggled to process what had happened. For so many, Fuller wasn't just a criminal, he was someone they thought they knew. He had been in their homes, shared meals with them, and had even been entrusted with the care of family members. But behind that facade, a much darker side of Fuller remained hidden, one that would eventually destroy a life and alter many others forever. Jack Fuller's past was far from spotless. His criminal history, which included charges related to drug abuse, theft, and violence, had been a constant thread running through his life. But to those around him, it appeared that he was simply a man trying to get by. At first glance, he seemed like someone who could be trusted. He was close enough to the Gregory family that Brittney's father, in particular, had allowed him to be in their lives without reservation. It was this blind trust that led to the unimaginable. On that fateful evening when Brittney called her mother, asking for a ride, it was Fuller who offered to drive her. It was a simple offer, one that didn't seem dangerous at the time. But within the confines of that car, something changed. Fuller began smoking crack cocaine, an addiction that had consumed much of his life, and Brittney, understandably upset, asked him to stop. That request, an innocent plea, would set off a chain of events that would result in Brittney's death. According to the details revealed during the investigation, Fuller's anger flared when Brittney challenged him. He couldn't handle the confrontation, and in a fit of rage, he began striking her. First with a slap, then with forceful punches. Within minutes, Brittney was unconscious. But Fuller wasn't done. In a panic, he attempted to cover up what he had done. He didn't call for help or try to save her. Instead, he buried her in a shallow grave, hoping that the earth would swallow the truth. The idea that a man could do something so horrific to a teenager, especially one he knew, was unfathomable to those who had once trusted him. Yet, the investigation revealed more troubling truths about Fuller's character. Fuller wasn't just some random stranger or a mere acquaintance, he had a history of violent outbursts, many of which had gone unnoticed by the people around him. His prior criminal record had been dismissed as youthful indiscretions, and his drug abuse had been seen as a personal issue, not one that could harm others. But now, it seemed that those warning signs had been there all along, quietly building to a tragedy that no one could have predicted. As the case moved forward, questions swirled about how this tragedy could have been prevented. Why did Brittney's father allow someone with such a history to be around his family? Why did the warning signs go unnoticed for so long? Many in the community were left grappling with these questions, trying to understand how the situation could have been avoided. For Brittney's family, the pain was overwhelming. Her mother, Deborah, was tormented by the guilt of not being there to protect her daughter in her final moments. She had spoken to Brittney only hours before the murder, making plans to pick her up. The guilt of not doing more, not seeing the danger in Fuller, weighed heavily on Deborah, as it did for Brittney's father, who had trusted a man who would ultimately betray that trust in the most devastating way. But it wasn't just the immediate family who suffered. Brittney's friends were also left to pick up the pieces. Her best friend, who had shared so many memories with her, now had to live with the haunting image of their last conversation. She had been one of the last to see Brittney alive, and the thought that she could have done something differently consumed her. The absence of closure, the inability to make sense of it all, left Brittney's friends in an emotional limbo, unsure of how to move forward with their lives. As Jack Fuller faced trial, the community could only wait and watch. On January 27, 2006, Fuller pleaded guilty to the murder of Brittney Gregory, admitting that he had caused her death in a violent outburst fueled by his addiction. The court sentenced him to 30 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. The sentence was cold comfort for those who knew Brittney, knowing that no amount of time behind bars could ever bring her back. Yet, in the wake of the trial, something important began to emerge, a renewed conversation about the signs of abuse, addiction, and violence that too often go unnoticed in the people we trust. For Brittney's mother, the pain of losing her daughter was impossible to escape, but she began to speak out about the dangers of ignoring the warning signs. She became an advocate for others, urging parents and communities to be more vigilant and aware of the hidden dangers around them. As the case of Brittney Gregory closed, the community of Brick Township was forever changed. The loss of Brittney, a young girl with so much potential, was a tragedy that no one would ever forget. But in her death, a greater awareness was born. If you're still following along, don't forget to give this video a like, share your thoughts in the comment, and subscribe to the channel. The lessons learned from this case are vital, and the story isn't over yet. As time passed, the pain of losing Brittney never fully subsided for her family, but there was a growing desire to turn her tragic death into a catalyst for change. Brittney's mother, Deborah, found herself at the center of a conversation she never wished to have, a conversation about the signs of abuse, addiction, and violence that often go unnoticed in the people we trust. It was clear that the community had been blindsided by the shocking reality of what Jack Fuller had done. No one had seen the warning signs, and no one had anticipated how a man they once considered a friend could be capable of such horrific violence. Deborah Gregory, despite her heartbreak, began to channel her grief into activism. She spoke out about the dangers of turning a blind eye to the small, seemingly insignificant behaviors that could point to larger issues, especially in people close to us. Fuller had been a regular fixture in the lives of Brittney's family, yet no one had suspected that his violent tendencies would ever escalate to the point of murder. Through her pain, Deborah worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the toxic effects of drug abuse, particularly crack cocaine, and the devastating consequences it can have not only on the user but on those who are closest to them. Her advocacy was fueled by a desire to prevent other families from experiencing the same anguish. She urged parents to be vigilant and to listen carefully to their children when they spoke about their interactions with others, no matter how harmless those interactions may seem on the surface. Deborah's campaign was a call to action, one that demanded the community take responsibility for protecting its most vulnerable members, children, especially. In the years that followed, Deborah and Brittney's family found ways to honor her memory, though the pain of her loss never faded. Each anniversary of Brittney's death was met with a mixture of sorrow and determination. The Gregory family set up scholarships in Brittney's name to support young women pursuing careers in the arts, something Brittney had always dreamed of. This became a way to keep her memory alive, giving young women the opportunity to chase their own aspirations while ensuring that Brittney's story was never forgotten. Yet even as Deborah fought to keep her daughter's legacy alive through positive change, questions about Fuller's sentencing and the justice system remained. Although he had been sentenced to 30 years in prison, many in the community believed the punishment didn't fit the crime. The pain Brittney's family endured could never be quantified, and no prison sentence seemed long enough for a crime so senseless. In the aftermath of Brittney's death, Brick Township began to slowly heal, but there was an undeniable shift in the way people interacted with one another. People became more cautious, more aware of the hidden complexities in their neighbors' and friends' lives. The case had exposed the fragility of trust, reminding everyone that no one is truly immune to the darkness that can exist beneath the surface. As much as people wanted to believe that their community was safe and that their families were invulnerable, Brittney's murder served as a harsh wake-up call. The investigation also raised uncomfortable questions about family dynamics and the nature of relationships. Jack Fuller had been a family friend, someone who was trusted by Brittney's father. How could a man so close to the family commit such a heinous act? And what role, if any, did addiction play in his descent into violence? These were questions that would linger in the minds of many, especially as it became evident that addiction had clouded Fuller's judgment, ultimately leading to his violent outburst. Despite all the tragedy, Brittney's story had one silver lining: it had sparked important conversations about substance abuse, violence, and the need for greater awareness of the signs of trouble within families and communities. For many, Brittney's death became a tragic but necessary reminder to pay closer attention, to protect those we love, and to never take for granted the people we think we know. The case, now a part of Brick Township's history, would never be truly closed for those who knew and loved Brittney. But through Deborah Gregory's efforts, the community was left with an enduring legacy, a legacy of prevention, awareness, and a commitment to protecting the most vulnerable among us. Thank you for following this story. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated as we continue to explore the ways in which tragedy can lead to change. Brittney's story is one that must never be forgotten, and the lessons learned from her death will continue to echo throughout the years.